Now let's get the show on the road. It is no longer news that journalists are one of the first targets of attack in the fight for good governance in the country. This has been happening forever and also undermines the freedom of expression, which is protected by Section 39, subsection 1 of the Nigerian Constitution. A civic tech platform, Press Attack Tracker, set up by the Premium Times Center for Investigative Journalism in collaboration with the Coalition for Whistleblowers and Press Freedom and Leaks NG, recorded that 36 Nigerian journalists were attacked between January and July this year, with 30 of the attacks recorded during the 2019 general elections. I don't know what you think, but for me, that is bad news. But nobody wants my opinion. I must remind you. We have a panel this morning who will be looking into this. It's my pleasure to welcome the chairman of the Nigerian Union of Journalists, Lagos, Dr. Kazeem Akinweti. Good morning. Yeah. Welcome.
Thank you.
And we have Dr. Martins Iwayanwo, who's president of Leadership Watch. We haven't seen you in a long time. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome. We also have the editorial page editor of The Nation, Mr. Sonia Oni, who has also been AWOL, as they say. We haven't seen him in a number of years. Yeah. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's good to have you with us this morning.
Good to be here too.
Yes. Press freedom. I would like to open with something that I read in the course of this week when I was thinking about press freedom. It was either the editor of the Washington Post or the New York Times who was quoted to have said, as a journalist, you can never write what is on your mind, what you think. If you did, or if we did, we'd all be in various prisons around the world. Mr. Akinweti,
yes.
What are your thoughts about that? I mean, he was very, very blunt.
Yeah, he was quite blunt. That is quite right, because if you look at the code of conduct and ethics of journalism, you see that biases are not really part of it. You must be accurate, you must be objective, you must be fair. And why are you going to do this? Because what you are doing necessarily is for public good and for public interest. So your personal...
That is paramount.
That is
the
paramount.
Public good.
Yeah, and that is why the press remains the bastion of democracy and good governance. We are the only... Journalism is the only profession that is recognized by the Nigerian Constitution. And that's why you call it the fourth estate of the realm. You have the executive, you have the judiciary, then you have the press. But out of all, it's only the press that does not have budgets, that has not been getting appropriation.
And that is not elected.
And of course, the essence is also to guard his own freedom, to guard his own liberty, so that appropriately we can make governments accountable for their deeds, and people accountable for their deeds. So when you are doing all these things, your biases, you just have to subject. You have to put it down.
But Dr. Nwanyo, isn't it a given? Isn't it supposed to be a given that the press should be free? Why are we talking about press freedom?
Yeah, my good friend here has just said, you see, it's not just about press or journalists just saying the way they feel, but we must take into cognizance the good and the interests of the nation. But I think what we'll be looking at here basically is why is it that certain leaders feel that, the press is like serving as opposition, even when the interest of the masses is being carried along. So that is, for me, the aspect that is a major source of concern, because somebody wakes up as a governor, or as president, or as agent of government, and read something in the newspaper, which, of course, are the facts. And you feel that because the journalists, like we now say, they are not elected, they don't have immunity and no special protection, then you can just pick him up and put him in detention as long as you want.
Without trial.
Without trial. So that is actually a major source of concern. Because if we have a situation like that, what it means is that we are not yet in a democratic governance.
But if you observe, Dr. Wanyawan, let me bring it to Mr. Oni. We talk about the press. We talk about government. There is hardly any government in Nigeria that we have had in Nigeria that we haven't had one thing or the other to say about. So what exactly is it that, every successive government always has one thing or the other that the press and people have to take them upon? So is it about a particular set of leaders or about the system?
You see, let's start by saying that the interest of the government, I'm talking of the governing class, and that of the media, there is something intrinsically adversarial. One exists to cover its misdeeds. The other exists
to expose
it. So that itself is a platform for conflict. Okay? Now, earlier on, you...
Do you mind saying that again? Yes. Okay. I want to hear it a second.
I said there's something intrinsically adversarial in the leadership. One, just like checks and balances, one exists to cover up what they are doing, their misdeeds. The other takes it upon itself to expose those very misdeeds that you rather cover up.
I think we should drink water on top of that for a while.
For that reason, we shall take a break. Welcome back. Mr. Oni, you were saying something which we interrupted because we needed to take some water.
Now, the point is, government thinks it is its primary responsibility to shield issues that ordinarily will border on public interest from the same public that it claims to serve. And the media derives its own rationale from presenting those things to the same public. So you have this inherent conflict.
But there's an FOI.
They didn't give you FOI. You demanded and you pressed for it. Okay? So the fact that it exists does not mean, for instance, it's just given, that you just walk in there and then they will release it to you.
Have you tried it before? Have you tried to...
I'm aware that several media organizations have tried to use the instrument. But sometimes you run into brick walls. Somebody will tell you that they are protecting it from public interest. You sometimes wonder, who defines that public interest? Is it the public interest as defined by government?
Yes.
Or the public interest that the media also feels that the people also have a right to know? So there's always this tension between the public's right to know and what government feels. I mean, it's sometimes very enunciating, this debate. Government appropriates money for projects. And suddenly, the media says, okay, this money was debated in the open. Now, warrants were released for expenditure, and then you now say, okay, let's even see how far these things have got. Who got what? And then somebody now tells you.
How much of it has been spent?
Exactly. And somebody now tells you it's no longer in public interest to know what exactly was appropriated by the same instruments of legislation. So those are the kind of problems that keep cropping up at every turn and junction. So the media in Nigeria, I mean, they take it upon, even with very difficult environments in which the media has to work. You find out that most of these things, you can't even readily source for them. The media has to go the extra mile to get those things. And then the government now says, no, you cannot do this, you cannot do that. So that tension, that's why you ask the question. Successive governments, it's an attitude thing. We are there. They are out there. We do not have a right to account. They don't have a right to demand accounting from us.
I'm going to ask that question again from Mr. Akinriti. From as far back as you can remember, we have journalism, the press has always had to take on governments at various levels on certain critical issues of state. And just during the break, we were talking about some issues that, you raise that issue now, in 10 years, you're still raising the same issue. And successive governments, different leadership, same government, will keep raising the same issues. And the press is always at the forefront of it. What's going on?
Well, that's part of our role, because no one would like to be accountable, ordinarily, except you are just forcing that. You just have to let us know what you have done. And because the nature of our job is, it's history in a hurry. And that's why every aspect of our story, there's a tie back to give you what has happened so and so time.
Yeah. My point, Mr. Akinreti, is,
yes.
sorry, my point is, every government,
yes,
during the military, some of the issues we raise today
still subsist.
So what's going on? Is government, or there are some other people behind the government?
No, because naturally we don't learn. We don't even learn from history. And even though we want to do, there are certain personal things that actually we just feel that, this is my own time. Let me just do the way I want to do it. But once you know that you are going to be checked, someone is going to ask you that, wait a minute, you can't do it that way, because these are laid down rules and regulations. This is what has happened before you. And this is what is happening now. And if care is not changed, this is what is going to happen in the future. That's why journalists will always be in conflict with government. Because people don't understand that the principles of democracy itself tells you there's freedom of speech, freedom of expression, fair hearing, right of reply. Even though if I've quoted you, that this so and so, you have the reply. Just let me know that, no, that is not true. And I will say, well, based on so and so fact, I stand with the information with me. So bring your own to the fore. And so ordinarily, few people would like you to be challenged. It is our job as a journalist to unearth what probably you think you have covered very well. In an attempt to do that, there are going to be conflicts. So basically, if government do know all over the world that people do that, we sign to certain principles. The media is, because it's global. Aside from the freedom of the press or freedom of expression, media must be involved in elections. Media must also be involved with the judiciary. Media must also make people accountable. There's impunity. That you can't go away with impunity. Media will call you to question.
Which brings me to, sorry,
yes.
Mr. Akinreti, which brings me to something, Dr. Wanyao. Practice, media practice. So media has certain responsibilities, and media is practicing it. I think the issue is of press freedom borders on practice. Is it a function of perception of how the practice is done, or a function of the practice itself being faulty?
Yeah, well, we could say sometimes it's a function of perception, okay? But generally, what we need to do in our setting in Nigeria, for instance, today, is to acknowledge the role of each person and each segment of the society. That you are a governor or you are in government as a minister does not mean that you have all the say, and the rest of the people do not have any say. The media, anywhere in the world, like you said, is global. Anyway.
Yeah, that's a bit difficult, because I have done a misdeed and I'm trying to hide it. And you are digging it up and telling me the whole world about it. There's no way you can be my friend.
Yeah, if you don't want...
Which is what Mr. Oni said the other time.
If you don't want...
They should just acknowledge it and accept it.
To uncover or to expose your misdeed, don't get involved in those misdeeds. The essence of...
And you think that is possible?
It is possible. We just develop this culture of get-rich-quick mentality. In fact, there is a very dangerous trend now. Somebody becomes a governor. The next you hear is that he goes to his village and buy up houses of his relations around him and knock those houses off so that he can, live like in isolation, so that, he doesn't have neighbors because he's now a governor. We had people who had been in government several years ago. I remember some back way. They didn't knock down their private homes because they became governor to build another one. Jaconde and all the rest. You know. So what is the problem? Why is this madness now that you become a governor, you become a teen god? Even within the community, your immediate community where you come from, you don't even want to have neighbors because you want to buy up houses that belongs to people which they are built around you, your neighbors, and then knock it down and then expand your estate because you were a governor. And ministers are doing that, legislators are doing that. So the problem is, you know, we have to ask ourselves, is this why you were elected to govern? Or is this why you are in a public office?
But then, to a large extent, it seems that people are generally quiet. Mr. Akinreti, many times when journalism brings up these issues, what kind of buy-in do you think the people, the press gets from the people that they are purportedly serving?
Two sides of the coin, because some appreciate it and some don't appreciate it. And that's the main danger. That's why in my opening, I have to talk about two key issues for public good and for public interest. Now, the public does not know that it is their own interest, that the journalists are doing all those things. Do people also know that if the society, you know, develops, everything is going on fine, that will be good for the people? So people don't, and that's when people need to protect the journalists, they don't do that. And that brings us to the issue of safety of journalists themselves.
We'll come to that one.
Okay, it's all right.
But focus on this matter because,
so,
one example that comes to mind now, of course, we've had some, you know, a number of issues that have been raised in the opening, but there are some that are currently going on which you are aware of, and I'm sure you would also want to raise. But the one that comes clear to my own mind now is a whistleblowing effort by Agba Jalingo in Cross River State. So in that regard, what do you think the people for whom he is supposed to be speaking should have done?
They should rise up.
And why haven't they?
To protect him.
Why haven't they? Because the assumption then would be
Yes.
that government is right
Yes.
to incarcerate him if the people are not raising eyebrows.
That's what I've said, that people do not even appreciate that he has even done that. They have done any whistleblowing. Some segment of people are not just interested. And they are the one that are called the opinion leader. They're the one that can move the people.
And some are takers.
And yeah, just believe that. Look, because okay, we are going to be affected one way or the other. Part of the elite believe that they are going to be affected one way or the other. They don't want to speak up. And the ordinary people who also rise and said, this guy has been able to unearth this, I've been all this because of we, the people. They are not interested. So we go to court. Do you see other people that even hail him and appreciate what he has done? So these are some of the things that ordinarily, when journalists just look back and say that, after all, I'm doing this for the people and people does not appreciate it. But that is not the issue. You have chosen this profession based on your conviction and the passion that you want to work for the people. So you don't look back.
So it has to be do or die.
No, the job has to be done. The job has to be done.
You know, let's look at it this way. It's like a mirror. The journalist has to reflect what is going on in government. At the same time,
in society, let's say.
At the society itself.
Yeah.
Now you talk about Agba Jalingo. Now we have a typically patriarchal society. This KBAC syndrome that sees power as the ultimate. Now you find yourself in the traffic, for instance, and then you discover that the cause of the traffic is one big giant pothole in front, and people are cursing and swearing at government. And then you hear one big man blow the siren, and then he asks everybody to jump into the bush because he must pass to go and serve the public. And then you wonder, in the first place, it is his own failing that created that pothole. And then you now say, stop this siren. The journalist says, no, you cannot do that. And then somebody says, but you know what? We put them there, authority. There is this thing
Constituted authority.
Exactly. So you now find sometimes the media hitting its head against the brick wall. But then it still does not absolve the media of that direct responsibility to continue to present it as it is, to educate the public on its own rights. Because there are so many people out there, they don't even know the difference between what is right and wrong. Agba Jalingo now, you say, where should the man come accuse the governor of certain misdeeds. People do not understand. And so the media still has a duty, no matter how frustrating sometimes some of these duties are, you still must take it upon yourself to continue to educate the public, to make them to understand that, look, the reason these people are there is because we are here. And we put them there. After all, they come every 4 years to beg. When they are looking for votes, they beg, they go into the neighborhoods.
And they use the media. And the same media whom they're going to fight when they get there.
Exactly. But as soon as they get there now, the table turns. And then they are, they now, assume that aura, that because they are now invested with the authority of state. And I think that's where the media has to do even much more. Threats of murder, threats of litigation should not deter the media. In any case, we've seen worse.
Dr. Wanyawo, Festus says that some journalists are damaging the journalism profession in Nigeria by being biased and they take sides. Nigeria's journalists should be worried for their profession and weed out the corrupt ones from their midst.
Yeah, that's Festus Kayamo. Is it Festus?
No, Festus Akimboye.
Okay. Well, you see, what happens here is basically if you are benefiting from the system, you tend to protect the system. It doesn't matter what happens. Everything goes. But if you're outside the system, because you can see, we're talking about even journalists right now. A couple of them now that are in positions of authority, either as SCA or PA media and all the rest. As soon as they get in there, everything changes. So for me also, that is a source of concern. Okay? So, and the journalists, whether you are in government or you are in your core practice, should make sure that you adhere strictly, to the ethics of your practice. So, because if you realize that, yes, today you are in government and tomorrow you are going to be out and you are still going to meet with your colleagues, and then they should be able to even ask you questions. Why you were there? A number of things were going wrong. What effort did you make on your part, to maybe seek for corrections or changes in those things? So I think, like I said, the issue of how we get things right, every one of us must be prepared to make our own little contributions. I was somewhere a few days ago, and we're talking about the role of civil society organizations generally. And I mentioned something, just like it was raised here. The journalists are exposing the misdeeds of politicians or so-called leaders. What is the reaction of the masses? The masses we are talking about are these people that can't feed themselves. Most individuals in this country today believe that in any particular day, they didn't go out to struggle in quote. They may not find anything to eat.
The hustle is real.
So if you don't have something to eat and somebody is asking you to join in a rally or in a protest somewhere, you ask yourself, who pays your bill? Who puts food on your table at the end of the day? So politicians are exploiting that.
You want to comment on what Festus said? Yeah.
You see, there's this tendency to, you want to hang somebody, you just make such bland statements. Say journalists are corrupt because of that, things like that. First and foremost, we must admit that the media itself is a reflection of the diversity of society. People have their preferences, their biases. But you must also admit that the Nigerian media, they have a very rigorous filtering process. I mean, you have NMA, medical association, yet there are still malpractices going on. You have other professions.
One of
even the
president,
even the bar, the
was
lawyers.
a fake doctor who became their president.
Okay, now there are so many laws in Nigeria that you can invoke on an errant media. Okay, those ones have not been used. I'm not aware that anybody, for instance, you have specific. I mean, there are cases where some media houses have been dragged to court and they were made to pay fines. Okay? Those are mechanisms the state is already instituted to correct misdeeds among the media. So when you single out the media and say corrupt and this and that, I think people should be more forthcoming. They should be able to come forward and give us specific instances where the media misled society. Yes, we have now the advent of the social media and how they've done a lot of havoc. But even the market itself has a way of dealing with dealing with that sector. Because ultimately, you will have to discern and decide which media product to consume in the long run. If a media house, for instance, keeps churning out falsehoods, at the end of the day, you have a choice not to buy.
It's also very important for us to clear the air on the issue of the accusation
I do
of
beg your
journalists.
pardon.
All right.
We have to wind down now.
Oh, okay.
So
okay.
I would like to take your last word on this, please.
Well, my last word
Parting
is just to say that Festus is being overgeneralized, saying that journalists are corrupt. And the basic things that there are rules. Rights to the NUJ, there is what we call ethics and disciplinary committee. If you believe someone has done wrong within the media, and that point will be punished appropriately. So do not make a generalized statement.
We all have to sit up, whether you're a journalist or a politician, whatever it is. It is important that we recognize that we don't have any other country except Nigeria. And it takes all of us to build
One
it.
American president once said, if he has to choose between a free press and a no government, he said he'd rather have the media. I think we must understand that the media, we need the media to keep society functioning.
Thank you very much. We have been chatting with the chairman of the Nigerian Union of Journalists, Lagos chapter, Kazim Akinreti, as well as the editorial page editor of The Nation, Mr. Sonyaoni, and Dr. Martins Iwayawu, president of Leadership Watch. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming to discuss this with us this morning, even though I know we still have a lot of grounds to cover, but on television, on a live program, that's the way it is. Thank you very much. Sunrise will be right back in just a moment. Stay with us.